Have you ever lost someone so suddenly that you forgot how to breathe? Stay until the end of this story, because what Daniel discovered 3 years after his wife vanished will completely change how you see love itself. And if this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe so we can share more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. Daniel Morris stood in the doorway of their bedroom, staring at the empty closet where Emma's clothes had hung just yesterday. The hangers swayed slightly, as if mocking him with their emptiness. No note, no explanation, no goodbye, just gone. His phone had buzzed once that morning with a single text message that read, "I'm sorry, I have to go. Please don't look for me." Then silence, complete, suffocating silence. For the first month, Daniel barely functioned. He called her parents, who seemed genuinely shocked. He contacted her friends, who knew nothing. He filed a missing person report, but the police found no signs of foul play. Emma had withdrawn money from their joint account, packed her essentials, and vanished as deliberately as smoke dissipating into air. The only thing more painful than her absence was the knowledge that she had chosen to leave. Their marriage had seemed perfect, or at least that's what Daniel had believed. 7 years together, 3 of them married. They had bought the little house on Maple Street with the blue shutters Emma loved. They had planted a garden together that first spring, laughing as they got dirt under their fingernails. They had talked about children, about growing old together, about all the dreams that seemed so certain when whispered in the dark. But now Daniel replayed every conversation, every moment, searching for clues he had missed. Had he been too focused on his work at the architecture firm? Had he stopped listening the way he used to? The questions gnawed at him like hungry wolves, offering no mercy and no answers. By the second month, Daniel's sister Claire moved in temporarily. She couldn't bear watching her brother become a ghost in his own life. She cooked meals he barely touched and sat with him during the long evenings when the silence became unbearable. One night, as rain drummed against the windows, Claire found him in the garage, surrounded by boxes of Emma's things he couldn't bring himself to move. "You have to start living again," Claire said softly, kneeling beside him. "This isn't what she would want for you." "How do you know what she wants?" Daniel's voice cracked. "She left without a word. Maybe destroying me was exactly what she wanted." Claire pulled him into a hug as he finally broke, sobbing against her shoulder with all the grief he'd been holding back. That night marked a turning point, not toward healing, but toward survival. Daniel made a choice. He would keep living, not because the pain had lessened, but because giving up felt like betraying something essential in himself. The third month brought an unexpected discovery. While cleaning out the attic, Daniel found an old shoebox tucked behind the Christmas decorations. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in Emma's handwriting. But these weren't addressed to him. They were addressed to someone named Sarah, dated over several years, none of them ever mailed. His hands trembled as he began to read. The letters revealed a Emma he hadn't fully known. They spoke of her childhood growing up with an abusive father, trauma she'd never fully shared with Daniel. They mentioned therapy sessions and medication for depression she'd hidden from him. They described panic attacks and a deep-seated fear of becoming like her father, of passing that damage on to children she might have. Each letter to Sarah, who Daniel learned was a friend who had died in college, was Emma working through her pain on paper, creating a dialogue with someone she'd lost. In the last letter, dated just a week before she disappeared, Emma wrote, "I can see Daniel looking at me lately with such hope in his eyes. He wants to try for a baby. He wants to take that next step. But I feel myself breaking inside, Sarah. What if I'm not capable of being a mother? What if I shatter and take him down with me? I love him too much to let him watch me fall apart. I love him too much to trap him with someone as broken as me." Daniel sat on the attic floor until dawn, crying and reading and finally understanding. Emma hadn't left because she stopped loving him. She had left because she loved him desperately and believed she was protecting him from her own darkness. It was misguided and heartbreaking and completely devastatingly Emma, who always tried to carry everything alone. This revelation shifted something in Daniel. The anger that had been building gave way to a profound sadness mixed with something else, determination. He started therapy himself, working through his own grief and abandonment. He threw himself into living more intentionally. He volunteered at a local community center, teaching kids how to draw and design buildings. He reconnected with old friends. He even started working on designing his dream project, a community arts center he'd always talked about but never pursued. A year passed, then two. Daniel never stopped hoping Emma might come back, but he also stopped putting his life on hold. He dated occasionally, though nothing serious developed. He couldn't quite open that door fully yet. On what would have been their 5th wedding anniversary, Daniel decided to plant a tree in their backyard, a cherry blossom Emma had always wanted. As he dug into the earth, his shovel struck something solid. Wrapped in plastic and buried shallow was a metal box. Inside, Daniel found more letters, these addressed to him, along with a journal Emma had kept. His heart hammered as he carried everything inside and began to read. These letters were different. They were love letters, dozens of them, written throughout their relationship and after she left. Each one expressed her love, her regret, her hope that he would move forward and find happiness. The journal entries detailed her decision to leave, her battle with her mental health, and her fierce belief that leaving was an act of love, not abandonment. One entry read, "I watch him sleep sometimes and I want to memorize everything. The way his hair falls across his forehead, the small scar on his chin from when he fell off his bike as a kid, the way he reaches for me even in his dreams. I'm memorizing him because I know what I have to do. I have to set him free from the weight of loving someone who's drowning. I just hope someday he understands that my leaving isn't about him not being enough. It's about me loving him too much to let him waste his beautiful life trying to save someone who doesn't know how to be saved." But it was the final letter that broke him completely. It was dated just 3 months prior. In it, Emma wrote that she had been living in Portland, that she had been in intensive treatment for her depression and childhood trauma, and that she was finally getting better. She wrote that she thought about coming back every single day, but was terrified that too much time had passed, that Daniel had moved on, that she had hurt him too deeply for forgiveness. She wrote that she still loved him with every fiber of her being. She wrote that if he ever wanted to find her, she would be waiting. She included an address. Daniel didn't pack a bag. He didn't overthink it. He simply got in his car and started driving. The 8-hour journey to Portland felt like both an eternity and an instant. His mind raced with everything he wanted to say, with the possibility that she might not want to see him after all, with the fear that he was too late. The address led to a small apartment building in a quiet neighborhood. Daniel stood outside for 10 minutes, gathering courage. Finally, he pressed the buzzer. The intercom crackled. "Yes?" Her voice after. 3 years nearly brought him to his knees. "Emma, it's me. It's Daniel." Silence stretched for so long he thought she might not respond. Then, 3rd floor, door on the right. He took the stairs 2 at a time. The door was already open when he reached it, and there she was, thinner than he remembered, her hair shorter, but her eyes the same deep brown that had first captured his heart in a college coffee shop nearly a decade ago. They stared at each other across the threshold, 3 years of pain and love and longing crackling in the space between them. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry." Daniel crossed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing, and he held her the way he dreamed of holding her for 3 years. "I know why you left," he said into her hair. "I found the letters, all of them, I understand. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as if letting go might cause one of them to disappear again. Finally, they moved inside and began the hard work of talking. Emma explained everything, her therapy, her diagnosis of complex PTSD and severe depression, the work she'd been doing to heal. Daniel shared his own journey, his pain, his growth, the life he'd been building. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Emma said, her voice raw. "I don't expect anything. I just want you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever done, and not a day went by that I didn't regret it. But I also needed to do the work to become someone who could actually be a partner to you. Someone who could love you without the weight of all that unhealed trauma crushing us both. Daniel took her hand. I'm not going to pretend this doesn't hurt. It does. What you did hurt me deeply. But I also understand that you were drowning, Emma. And I understand that sometimes love means doing hard things, even if they're the wrong things because you believe they're right. We can't go back to who we were, but maybe we can figure out who we are now. They didn't fix everything that day or even that month. Daniel returned home, and they started slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust through phone calls and video chats and eventually visits. Emma continued her therapy, and Daniel continued his. They learned to communicate in ways they never had before, with honesty that was sometimes brutal but always necessary. They learned that love isn't just a feeling but a choice, made over and over, especially when it's hard. 6 months later, Emma moved back, not into their old house, which Daniel had sold, but into a new apartment they chose together. They didn't rush back into marriage. They dated again, learning each other as the people they'd become. They went to couples therapy. They talked about boundaries and needs and fears. They built something new on the foundation of who they'd been, strengthened by everything they'd survived. On what would have been their 7th wedding anniversary, Daniel took Emma back to the house on Maple Street. The new owners had kept the blue shutters. The cherry blossom tree he'd planted stood strong in the backyard, covered in pink blooms. They stood together looking at it, and Emma squeezed his hand. I never stopped loving you, she said quietly, even when I left. Especially when I left. That's the part I need you to understand. My love never left. It was always here, waiting for us to be ready for it again. Daniel pulled her close. I know, and that's what saved us. Not the love that existed when everything was easy, but the love that survived everything that was hard. That's the love that matters. They remarried 2 years later in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. This time, the vows they wrote themselves acknowledged the brokenness they'd both carried and the healing they'd fought for together. This time, they promised not perfection, but honesty, not to never hurt each other, but to always choose to work through the hurt. This time, they built their marriage not on the fantasy of forever being easy, but on the reality that forever requires showing up, especially on the days when leaving feels easier. Daniel still keeps Emma's letters in a box in their closet. Sometimes, when he needs to remember how far they've come, he reads them. They remind him that love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's fierce and terrifying. Sometimes it means letting go. Sometimes it means holding on with everything you have. But real love, the kind that survives the worst of us and brings out the best of us, that love never truly leaves. It waits, it endures, it transforms. Emma still has hard days, Daniel does too, but now they face them together with the knowledge that leaving isn't the only option when things get dark. Now they have tools and trust and the hard-won understanding that healing isn't a linear and love isn't always easy, but both are always worth fighting for. They never did have children. They decided together that their healing and their partnership was enough, that the life they were building was complete as it was. And it was. Years later, people would ask them how they survived what they survived. Daniel and Emma would look at each other and smile, that secret smile of two people who walked through fire together and somehow came out holding hands on the other side. And they would say simply, she left without warning, but her love never did. And in the end, that made all the difference. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love is messy and complicated and worth fighting for, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the imperfect, beautiful reality of being human. Because we all need reminders that it's okay to struggle, it's okay to fall apart, and it's always possible to find your way back to love. Thank you for watching.